Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide. Well, here we go. After quite a bit of time, because there was like a ton of things to do, this one is finally now done. So, welcome to the in-depth review of the new generation, the latest Dasung e-ink monitor. Paperlike HD is the new generation of Dasung's 13.3-inch e-ink monochromatic USB-powered portable display. It has been redesigned to be more stylish and more modern than its predecessor. The MSRP for the Paperlike HD is $1,099 or basically $1,100 for the HD-FT version, which has both the front light and the touch capability. It comes in silver and dark gray color options. The new Paperlike HD comes with a much more improved design. It has an aluminum alloy shell and a flush screen surface with an elegant screen gray color bezel. It is clear that the new design was inspired by the Boox Mira. Basically, if the old Paperlike HD and Boox Mira had a baby, the new Paperlike HD-FT would be it. Build quality is mostly okay, but there are some issues. The metal shell edges on the front of the device are sharp and lack chamfering. Sharp edges without chamfering are a no-no on metal shells. It won't really cut you, but it will be uncomfortable to handle, and if a sharp metal edge bumps against another softer surface, it is bound to leave a scuff, a scratch, or a mark of some kind. Dasung Paperlike HD-FT is of a larger footprint while being very thin, especially on the top side where it is only 5.1 mm thin. The natural tendency of a design like that is for the long side to try and bend unless there are reinforcements in place to prevent it from doing so. I don't know if Dasung does have such reinforcements in place or if they hope that the stronger aluminum alloy would be enough, but a slight bend along the long side of the device is clearly present. It is nothing dramatic, nor will it affect the user in daily use in any way, but is definitely something that's present. Buttons are much improved over the last generation model and provide for a confident, satisfying, and pleasant tactile experience. The paper gray bezel around the screen is a very welcome addition and makes the panel very pleasant to use for reading and writing. The addition of anti-skid rubber feet is also a very welcome change, as it ensures that the device will stay at an angle you leave it at and will not slide or move around when interacting with the front panel buttons. Another addition to the new generation of the Paperlike HD display is that it now has magnets and a dedicated magnetic cover. Currently, Dasung offers the magnetic protective cover or stand for free when purchasing the new generation Paperlike display. But it isn't clear if this is simply marketing speak or a limited offer. I was unable to find them offering the cover separately on their web store for sale, so the availability and pricing are unclear on that front. I believe this cover should simply be a part of the package for this display, as it makes most sense when used in conjunction with it. The cover design is fairly basic, with an artificial moleskin look to it. It is discreet, but the color has a faintish green tint to it, and I would have preferred it to be more on the monochromatic side of things, because a greenish gray color fuzzy surface doesn't really invoke feelings of beauty, at least not for me. The cover is magnetic and you can snap the device in place, sort of, and hold it secure mostly. The concept is again very similar to what we saw on the Boox Mira, but the execution and the design are nowhere near the level presented on the other device. This feels and looks a lot cheaper than the solution designed and employed on the Boox Mira. The main issue here are the magnets. While strong, the placement and the design is such that the cover and the device are unable to snap themselves into the appropriate relative placement. Furthermore, there are no physical or mechanical guidelines in the design of either the device or the cover to help guide the two snap into the correct place. The end result is that you will snap the device onto the cover askew and then will have to manually push and adjust their relative placements until it kind of fits, while it never really stays in place. I suspect that the main issue here is the engineering design itself and inexperience in developing products like these. It is not enough just to place a big piece of magnet in the middle and then let the user fiddle around and hope to make it fit every single time you attach the device to the cover. Placement and polarity of magnets can be used to actually guide the device into the desired location and let it snap into the perfect place on its own every single time. The cover doubles as a stand as well, although in landscape orientation only. It has 3 slots for 3 preset angle positions, and in combination with the anti-skid rubber feet on the device, it works very well. The build quality of the cover is poor. The one I received already had damage on one of the corners, and with the absence of stitching or reinforcements of any kind, I don't think that this cover will be able to remain undamaged in normal daily use for any extended period of time. Also, there's some creaking and cracking coming from the sides of the cover if I even slightly bend it, which sounds like the cover surface ungluing from the harder internal panels. Doesn't really instill confidence. The poor design and construction of the cover were demonstrated and confirmed far sooner than I could have imagined. During the time of writing the bullet points for this review, which was conducted outside on a sunny day, in a span of just 2 hours of exposure to sunlight, the load-bearing side of the cover in the stand form has actually arced over and completely bent. It has remained in such a state even after removing the device from the sunlight and setting some weight on top of it to attempt to straighten it out. Basically what happened is that the material used for the reinforcement panels of the cover stand is so poor that 2 hours of sunlight exposure on a 24 degrees Celsius day was enough to soften it out to a degree where it was no longer able to support the weight of the device it was supposed to hold. So it started to bend under the load. Upon cooling down, when taken away from the sunlight, it hardened back up, but in such a bent state, thus leaving it in a permanently deformed state, meaning ruined. The cover is now basically unusable. This demonstrates not only that the build quality and the design of the cover is extremely poor, but more worryingly, it shows that the amount of testing that went into verifying this part was well below minimum, if at all present. The question then arises, if such a glaringly obvious mistake was allowed to pass, what other mistakes and oversights were made? This doesn't instill a level of confidence into the whole package or the brand itself. The cover is an almost necessary addition to make the Paperlike be as ergonomic and as usable as it is, and you will want to use it. The idea and the thought behind it are actually good, but the execution on all fronts except the stand slots are well below acceptable. This is a very big problem, especially when you take into consideration the price of the Paperlike and its main competitor, the Book's Mira, and the quality that it delivers for $300 less. Paperlike HD-FT is a 13.3-inch e-ink monochromatic display with a flat, flush screen surface and a resolution of 2200 by 1650, which means that it runs at a resolution of 207 ppi. It uses their proprietary Dasung Turbo Fast Speed Refresh Rate. That's not a joke, and I wish I was a fly on the wall while they were coming out with that name. It has a mini HDMI and USB-C input ports, which is a big improvement over the previous generation model that required the use of a specialized mini HDMI/USB cable to use the device. Now we can finally have a single USB-C cable that will provide the device with power, data, and video signal, making it much more elegant, modern, and easier to use than its predecessor. It also has a 3.5mm headphone or speakers jack, which is a welcome addition. It is compatible with Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems, however, touch input is not supported on Mac and iOS devices. I don't have a Lightning to HDMI cable, so I was unable to test if the monitor works via such a cable with an iPad or an iPhone, but I do have a USB-C cable. My OnePlus 7 Pro Android phone was not able to establish a connection with the Dasung monitor, even though it works perfectly fine with other portable screens. However, my Lenovo Tab P11 Pro, an Android tablet, on the other hand, established a connection, though the performance was not always great and it was a little bit kinda weird. It was not all there. HDMI connectivity worked fine with any PC that I tried, including my 10-year-old MacBook Pro via a Frankenstein mini DP to DVI-D to HDMI conversion, but that worked fine. However, other devices, not so much. I tried my Super Nintendo Mini and it would just blink, but would not display any type of a signal, and if I would hook up my camera output directly to it, it was just displaying a corrupt signal, no usable image. One of the big improvements of the new generation Paperlike HD is the new dual color front light. It is of a very good quality, but it's not possible to adjust the intensity of each color individually. Just a cold-warm slider that is supposed to be available via the companion app only. More on that later. And you also have the overall intensity control. It is 640 grams light, which is great, and only 5.1 millimeters thin at its thinnest side, although that also comes at the cost of slight bending along the top side of the device, as mentioned earlier. The device has a screw-in fixed metal leg stand, which is okay, but extremely limited because of the fixed angle, which is a bit too upright for general use. Visa compatibility is there, although only for 75 by 75 mm standard. It is achieved via the use of magnetic mounts. The magnetic cover can be used as a stand as well, also mentioned earlier. It's good to see the apparent versatility, and the magnetic Visa mounts should provide to be a sufficient and efficient method of mounting the device to alternative mount stands, because the monitor can remain portable. You can simply snap it onto the magnetic holders or take it off when you want to take the monitor with you to another room. The dimensions are 311.2 mm by 234.9 mm by 5.1 mm at its thinnest side. Controls are located on the left side of the bezel and consist out of 6 discrete and comfortable to use buttons. On the top you will find the power toggle button. Next is the front light button, which on its own cycles through the front light modes, which are turn on, mixed light mode by default, cold light, warm light, and turn off. The front light button, in conjunction with the plus and minus front panel buttons, can be used to control and cycle through the front light intensity. The user manual states that the client software can be used to control the front light color temperature adjustment, and this is the only way to actually do it, but the client software available on their website is from 2019, the latest version available, and it does not work with this panel. At least for me it didn't work, which means that I was unable to test the front light color blending functionality. The M button stands for modes, and you can use it to switch through display modes, which are graphic by default, text, and video modes. Each mode adjusts the contrast to balance the end result for specific use case scenarios. This is an improvement over the previous model, where modes were simply labeled M1, 2, 3, and 4. Labeling display modes lowers the learning curve, and that is something that I immediately noticed on the new Paperlike HD monitor. The M button can be used in combination with the plus and minus buttons to control the display speed. There are 5 speed modes: fast, fast plus, fast plus plus, fast plus plus plus, and fast plus 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 plus. I'm not joking, that's how it's named. So it must have been a very interesting meeting for that naming as well. Trade-off for speed is image contrast and ghosting. The faster the display is, the less of a contrast the image will have and more ghosting will appear. This behavior is consistent across all display modes. On the old generation Paperlike, we also had 5 display modes, and they function more or less the same, they just have different labels associated with them on the new device. And finally, we have the C button, which is used to manually perform a full screen refresh, which is used to get rid of the ghosting. The front panel control buttons are quite good and are well placed on the device. The build quality and the design are also good, and they are easy to interact with and give a confident feeling that they should last over time. Provided controls are extensive, and aside from the front light temperature control, virtually every other important aspect of the screen can easily be adjusted via the front panel controls. They are easy to learn and get used to, and overall provide an important aspect to the real-world usability of the new generation Paperlike HD monitor. The review sample provided to me by Dasung is the top-of-the-line FT model, which includes both the front light and the touch functionality on the supported platforms. Touch control is responsive and worked as expected out of the box. It is a nice addition to the functionality of the device, but I wouldn't call it essential, as this is a device that will stand on a desk and not in your lap due to its dependability on cables or a cable. There are 9 levels of contrast available, and it is controlled via the plus and minus buttons alone. It adds another layer of flexibility for different modes, and it's easy to quickly dial in the desired contrast amount. Overall, the controls and ergonomics of the new Paperlike HD, aside from the sharp metal edges of the shell, which were mentioned earlier, are quite good and a noticeable step forward from the previous generation model. Image quality was very good for an e-ink panel display on the previous generation model. It had a slight perceived speed advantage over the competitor Boox Mira. However, the previous generation Paperlike HD's front light was quite flawed, and contrast tended to be a little bit more washed out than the Boox Mira in higher speed modes. One area that was clearly dominant over the Boox Mira was that the old generation of the Paperlike HD didn't have the display flickering attribute that the Boox Mira exhibited. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case, and the new generation Paperlike does exhibit the same type of flickering behavior on areas of the screen where the image is being refreshed, same as the Boox Mira does. This is most likely due to how the newer e-ink panels functioned and is not something that the manufacturers can have direct control over if they want to run the panel in a specific mode. Screen surface reflectivity is okay, it's not great, it's not bad, it's okay. So it's going to work fine for most situations. In some situations you are going to get some glare, and when it is used outside you do get sunshine glare, but you are going to be able to find a position where it's not that bad and where you're going to be able to use it. Overall, the image quality is excellent for reading, writing and browsing, like it was on the previous model, except that now it's even more enjoyable due to the overall redesign of the monitor. The new and improved front light is a big plus and improves visibility, clarity and usability of the monitor over the old generation model. Image quality and performance will of course depend on the display mode and speed setting used, but overall the image quality is clear and crisp and contrast is good. But in certain display modes, ghosting can still be an issue, so that's something that you should definitely keep in mind. With 3 display modes and each having the option of 5 display speed settings, you theoretically end up with 15 display settings variations for different needs and situations. This should mean that you can quickly find which display mode and speed suits your needs best. However, not all modes are that useful. For example, text mode is, at least as far as I can see it, completely unnecessary. The graphic mode is so versatile that by simply controlling the speed modes, you can fine-tune the balance between the contrast and speed and always end up with the end result that is much better and more usable than any of the text modes are. Yes, the text mode explodes the contrast to the maximum, but the question is, why would you need it to do that? The graphics mode with the slowest speed setting has excellent blacks and contrast while maintaining better speed and less ghosting than the text mode on any speed levels. In fact, it looks better than the text mode on both small and large fonts. Increasing the speed on the text mode doesn't help either because it introduces very high levels of ghosting, effectively making it unusable unless you press the C button on each screen change. So it's best just to forget about the text mode, it's not something that you'll ever really use. That leaves us with graphics and video mode, and the good news is that both modes are very good at what they do and are very flexible with different speed settings. I ended up using almost exclusively the graphics mode for everything except video playback and for websites that have a lot of animated banners. The graphic mode has the same downfall as the Boox Mira does in its graphic mode equivalent, and that is the before mentioned flickering on-screen area changes. This problem is very present on a moving mouse cursor, a blinking cursor when typing in high contrast situations, and on websites with a lot of animated banners. However, adjustment of the contrast setting does help remedy that issue, and it is not present at all in the other modes. Generally speaking, graphic mode with different speed setting was able to satisfy 99% of my use case scenarios, and the remaining 1% was for me video content, in which case I would switch over to the video mode. Display speed is something that deserved in-depth testing because of one claim Dasung made on their website, which says it is as fast as LCDs. Now that is a very bold claim, and that means that Paperlike HD has to be able to display at least 30 frames per second in its fastest mode to make that claim actually true. So I decided to test that in a controlled and accurate manner. In order to accurately test this, I would need a media source that plays back frame numbers and time in seconds at a very high frame rate on a high-speed LCD screen, for example 144 Hz or frames per second. I would record this counter in high speed at 400 frames per second, thus allowing a precision level of 7 milliseconds, which is the display duration of one frame on the screen at the display rate of 144 Hz or frames per second, and making it possible to verify the results with a sufficient degree of accuracy. First, I made a dedicated video file with playback rate of 144 frames per second of a timer/frames counter that would allow me to accurately measure how many frames in 1 second have been displayed, and as a bonus would allow for a reasonably accurate measurement of the latency between the source and the display. This didn't work because I failed to take into account the fact that while I can render out a video in 144 frame per second format, and I do have a screen that does have 144 Hz refresh rate, there are no video players out there that are made to play back video content at 144 frames per second. This meant that I had to make it as a real-time application, like a video game, in order to achieve this. So I fired up Unity and quickly whipped up a simple little app that allows me to do exactly that. Once done, I tested it on the 144 Hz screen to verify the testing methodology and that I can indeed record and see each individual frame count being displayed. That verified, then I switched the screen into a 60 Hz mode to verify again that indeed I will see only 60 frames displayed in the span of 1 second, which was again true. The footage shown in the YouTube video will have some discrepancies and will show some skipped frames because it has been converted to 25 frames per second from 29.97 frames per second, but in the original raw footage, each frame is clearly visible and there are no skipped frames which allowed accurate frame measurements. Testing tools and methodology established and verified, I proceeded to test each display mode at each speeds mode of the Dasung Paperlike HD-FT, getting the 15 measurements of the FPS display speed and latency. Paperlike HD-FT was connected to the laptop directly via the USB-C cable, and the displays were set to duplicate mode with the resolution set to favor the Paperlike HD-FT and allow it to run in its recommended resolution. Display refresh rate for the Paperlike in Windows was set to the highest available, which is 44.118 Hz, which allows for the theoretical maximum speed of 44.118 frames per second. You will also see the Nova Air in the shot between the two screens. It is simply there to show which display and speed mode is being tested in the footage, like a digital post-it note. Testing results show that display modes have no real effect on the display speed, and only the speed modes directly and equally affect the display speed across all of the display modes. So the results are as follows. The speed mode fast runs at 4 frames per second or 13.33% of a standard 30 frames per second LCD. Fast plus mode runs at 7 frames per second or 23.33% of a standard LCD. Fast plus plus runs at 9 frames per second or 30% of a 30 frames LCD. Fast plus 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 runs at 12 frames per second or 40% of an LCD. And fast plus 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 plus, the fastest mode, runs at 15 frames per second or 50% of a standard 30 FPS LCD monitor. You will notice in the chart slight deviations in individual cases, but this falls within the error margin since there is a 7 millisecond precision limit present in this testing methodology. Latency was consistent across all display and speed modes at the quite noticeable 90 milliseconds. So no, it is most definitely not as fast as an LCD. In fact, in its absolute fastest mode, it achieves 15 frames per second. We should also keep in mind that the new standard for LCDs is 60 Hz or frames per second, not 30 Hz or frames per second. So the Paperlike HD-FT at its absolute maximum achieves 50% of the old LCD refresh speed standard and only 25% of the new LCD refresh speed standard. There was absolutely no need for Dasung to make such a bold claim in the very first place. No one forced them to do that. One of two things happened here. Either they didn't even bother to measure the performance of their device and chose to eyeball it and just make that claim, just because it will sound good and might trick customers into believing it, or they did measure it, were aware of the results, but still decided to make that claim, again in the hope of tricking the customers into believing something that is an obviously, verifiably, measurably a false claim. Regardless of which option happened, the end result is the same. Saying that the Paperlike HD-FT is as fast as LCDs is factually a false claim, making it a deceptive marketing approach, legality of which is questionable depending on the region of the world. Paperlike HD-FT is a very fast e-ink display at 15 frames per second, and this is quite impressive for an e-ink device and an excellent achievement. But the image quality degradation is, for my taste at least, just too high to make it a pleasant viewing experience for a prolonged period of time. However, this isn't the problem for me. This is something that I expect and something we see in all e-ink display products, books, Mira, old Paperlike HD or anything else. It's just how the technology works, and that's fine. What is absolutely not fine on any level is to make false marketing claims that will trick customers into believing that the performance of the device is something that it is not. To put it into context, if you were to buy an LCD computer display monitor that says that it's 120 Hz capable, only to find out that it can run at 60 Hz maximum, what would your reaction be? Or if you purchased a laptop that claimed that it has an 8-core CPU and 8 GB of RAM, only to find out that it actually has 4-core CPU and 4 GB of RAM, what would your reaction be? Yeah, I thought so. So this is why that claim is such a very big deal. Frontlight on the Paperlike HD is a very big improvement to the previous generation model and is a very welcome change. It makes the device much more flexible and usable in a variety of situations. The only problem is that without an app, it's impossible to control the balance between the warm and cold front light, and as we've already established, the app that supports the new device either doesn't exist or is quite well hidden. But even without the color mixing ability, the front light modes and intensity adjustments are more than good enough to help you find the right combination for the majority of situations you may find yourself in. My only real nibble with the front light would be that the minimum intensity setting is not low enough, while the maximum is unnecessarily high. On an e-ink device, there are really no environmental situations where you will actually need the front light to go to super high intensity levels, because unlike a backlight on a traditional display, an e-ink display is not fighting the lighting in its environment, it's actually using it. So this means that the front light will exclusively be used in low light conditions or to discretely tint the coloration of the displayed image. It's far more useful for an e-ink device to have a wider range in the lower intensity of the front light, and this is something that the new Paperlike lacks a little bit. New Paperlike sees also a big improvement in connectivity. Now we have a mini HDMI and a USB-C input ports, making it possible to use a single USB-C cable and provide the monitor with power, display and data signals, ensuring full functionality. If you choose to use the mini HDMI port and you want to make use of the touch functionality, then you will need to plug in the USB-C to USB-A cable to the computer as well to allow for data communication and power the monitor, as the mini HDMI can only transfer video and audio signals. There is also a 3.5mm audio output jack available for your headphones or speakers, which is a nice thing to have. Real-world usability is slightly improved from the last generation Paperlike, and it is now on par with the Books Mira. The two biggest improvements are the front light and the inclusion of the USB-C port. Those two ensure that the Paperlike HD is now a device that can interface with current generation devices, and as such, it isn't as outdated as the previous generation model was. I found that document reading and typing was the type of activity that I enjoyed most on the Paperlike HD. However, this doesn't include coding, simply because when I code, I rely on colors and on speed mostly, and the speed factor is simply not something that made it comfortable for me to work on. General use is possible, but you will have to set up your computer to use this monitor. This normally means not using dark modes in apps, not using dark backgrounds, enabling high contrast mode in your system and apps, etc. If this is something that you can and you are willing to do, then you will ensure that you are getting the best out of this device. If you expect to be able to use it as a secondary screen on your regular screened setup, then you will run into some hurdles and issues, which means that your end result will be a compromise that's not utilizing the maximum potential of the device. Video content watching is also possible on this panel, which is quite impressive, and in some situations it's actually a pleasant viewing experience. In others, not so much, so it will be a hit and miss when watching video content. The obvious advantages of using an e-ink display are of course there. For outdoor use, it is far better performing than a traditional LCD display. It consumes less energy, radiates less heat, and is a lot easier on the eyes, benefiting your health as well over an extended period of time. Ultimately, yes, I could use the Paperlike HD quite well, that is until the cover deformed. After it deformed, since it works as a stand as well, that introduced a lot of other issues. I was no longer able to comfortably operate the front panel controls because the device would slip out of cover, and I am unable to control the screen with the app because the app is MIA. So unfortunately, in this particular case, the real-world usability of this device was severely hampered by the cover stand deformation due to its short-term sun exposure. False claim of the device's refresh speed capabilities is my first and major con. Intentional or not, the claim is a completely false representation of what the device's performance capabilities are, and as such will trick some customers into actually believing it. The cover and the device magnets don't actually align the device to the cover, making it a chore to manually align the device to the cover each and every time it is attached to it. The cover build quality is completely inexcusable and easily ruins the usability of the device. Not compatible with devices that are normally able to run portable monitors via a USB-C. Build quality leaves a little bit to be desired. Companion app that supports this monitor is either very difficult to find or doesn't actually exist. And finally, the price. The price is a very big con for the Paperlike HD-FT. Paperlike HD has very good image quality. It has excellent video performance if you disregard the false refresh speed claim. Very good device flexibility with different modes and speeds. USB-C connectivity is an excellent thing to see on this device. Improved front panel controls provide for comfortable use. Much better front light than its predecessor, and a much more modern and stylish design of the device than its predecessor. Well, yeah, there we go. So, my first impression of the new generation Dasung Paperlike HD-FT monitor was actually rather positive. I think that this is a very good device at its core. It offers a very nice new design, and some of the ergonomic touches are really good. Basically, the device has a lot to offer. It would be easy to recommend it if this device lived in a complete vacuum and its only competitor was its predecessor. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and Paperlike HD has to compete with the Boox Mira directly. Considering that the new Paperlike HD looks so much like Boox Mira, it is safe to assume that people at Dasung were also aware of that fact that it has Boox Mira to compete with. And that fact makes it very puzzling and difficult to explain the state of the Paperlike HD, why it is the way it is. At the asking price of nearly $1,100 a product that's offered absolutely has to justify that high price tag at every front. And the new Paperlike HD simply doesn't. Unchamfered metal edges, slight bending of the device along the thin, long line, unavailability of the mentioned companion and needed companion app, design of the magnetic configuration for the device and the cover itself, absolutely unacceptable build quality of the magnetic case stand itself, and the false marketing claim about the device's refresh speed capabilities are all glaring issues that make the end product not desirable at the price point that they are asking for, especially when there's a competitor around and there's choice to be made. So this is just quite bad. Sure, the panel itself performs really well and is actually quite usable in quite a lot of situations, as I've shown in this review. That's not the problem. And the TurboMach Super Speed Uber Warp technology also works because it is actually quite impressive, the quality that you get at which you can view the videos and things like that. So real-world usability is definitely there, but that technology and that panel, they have to be encompassed into an end product that makes sense and something that can be used with ease and confidence over an extended period of time, at $1,100. The magnetic cover is almost an integral part of the usability of this device because that fixed foot, while it does work okay, it is what it is. So if that angle doesn't suit you for whatever reason, then you're stuck. That's it. And then you don't have an alternative. What an alternative is to get a Visa mount and things like that, and that blows up the price even higher. So ultimately, you want to be able to use this device as it was intended to be used, which means with the magnetic cover stand. But that cover/stand permanently deformed and warped after an outdoor exposure to the sun of only 2 hours. Even though this is still technically functional, so yes, I can slap the device in, I can't really align it anymore because of the warp. I get these kinds of things. That's how it looks, and when you set it on the ground, it sets like this, and you can't really do anything with it because it's kind of basically ruined. On top of all of that, it's not just ugly and it's not just impractical anymore, but you can't really use it as a stand anymore. Because of that deformation, the device no longer stands comfortably and reliably in those grooves, and when you operate the buttons, it tends to slip out and slide and fall, which makes it functionally unusable. And maybe you could actually overcome that problem if you really, really wanted to for whatever reason via the accompanying app, but that one's not available either, or the one that's available doesn't really work with this device. So yeah. As such, using the Paperlike HD-FT quickly became a chore and a very big inconvenience. And considering that Dasung themselves in their promo material say that for this device, that Paperlike HD series is perfect for outdoor environments, I agree. The panel itself, yes it is. The technology, yes it is. The end product, no, it's not. It has not even been tested to withstand the forces of nature. So that just doesn't make any sense, because again, that cover stand was permanently ruined after exposure to only 2 hours of normal sunshine, thus crippling the usability of the entire end product. And if that was not enough, then on top of all of that, like a little cherry on top, you also have the blatantly false claim about the device's refresh speed capabilities. And in case of a monitor device, the refresh speed is actually the one of the main performance features. So yeah, it does matter quite a lot. For a product that costs $1,100 US, all of this is completely unacceptable, especially if you take into consideration that the main competitor, Booksmira, does all of the things that the Paperlike HD does almost equally well. Maybe the speed is a little bit lower, but generally speaking, that's pretty much the same thing. And some things it does a lot better, but for the price of $300 US less. With the Booksmira, you get better quality that has very similar real-world performance as the Paperlike HD, more functionality, and at a price of $300 US less. So this situation, unfortunately for the Dasung Paperlike HD, is a complete no-brainer. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell down in the description below to get notified when new videos come out on my deep guide. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, because I'm really interested to hear what people think and how much they are willing to forgive. Yeah, in the case of esoteric and niche technology and niche marketplace, such as the e-ink devices are. Thank you so much for watching. Check out in the description down below. You will find the links to the Discord My Deep Guide server, which is a community place where we talk and share opinions, photos, setups, and things like that regarding the e-ink technology and the world of e-ink devices. And also in the description down below, you will find the link to the My Daily Organizer. My Daily Organizer has been carefully designed to offer a comprehensive yet effortless all-year-round experience. If used daily and in a recommended fashion, My Daily Organizer, or MDO for short, can significantly improve your productivity, effectiveness, and efficiency in both professional and personal settings. Full interactivity with over 11,000 hyperlinks spreading throughout the entire document, dedicated Monday and Sunday week start versions of the document, full year calendar with access to to any month, quarter, and day of the year. Quarterly organizer also with access to the months and the days of the selected quarter. Monthly organizer with quick links to weeks each day and also some room for organizational and planning notes for that month. Weekly organizer is also available with access to each day of the week, and you also have one extra weekly notes page. The daily organizer side offers a daily planner page, 2 dedicated note pages, and a diary page for each day of the year, which can help keep track of your short and long-term goals. And you also have access to 99 cataloged and numbered My Notes pages, and the same thing with 99 cataloged My List pages. There are 3 different cover styles to choose from depending on your personal preference, and there's also a dedicated left-handed version of the MDO created especially for the Remarkable platform. MDO has multi-platform compatibility for the Remarkable, Supernote, and Books platforms. It can and will work on other platforms as well. Main prerequisites are that the platform has a dedicated PDF reader with support for writing annotations into the PDF and, of course, hyperlink functionality. If you would like to learn more about how MDO works, check the videos in the My Daily Organizer playlist in the description below. Or if you already like how MDO sounds and it's something that can help you better organize your professional and/or personal life, then you can buy it at mydeepguide.com/shop. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see you in the next video. Bye!